Welcome back to my channel, Itsy Bitsy Builders. I'm really excited to be bringing you this tutorial. These are some mini shadow boxes which I've created with my Cricut Maker. For this project, I've used 1/6 scale and 1/12 scale. And the frames are completely freestanding. Let's get started. The dimensions for this project are taken from this IKEA shadow box. Taking the full-size measurements from the IKEA website, I've then converted the scale using inch calculator. In 1/6 scale, that conversion is 4.5 centimeters or 1.8 inches. Then we do the same for 1/12 scale. Head on over to Cricut Design Space and we're going to start by making 2 squares. To cut out the frame, drag your second square over to the first one and overlap it like so. Using the resize tool in the bottom right hand corner, you're going to resize your second square so it fits snugly inside the first one, like so. Then highlight both squares and go over to the Actions tab and we're going to click Slice. This will cut the smaller square out of the big square, and if you drag those pieces across, you've got your frame. Then recolor this shape to white because we're going to use white cardstock at the front of our frame. Now we need to resize our frame under the Edit tab, but you need to make sure this little padlock is locked so we retain the aspect ratio, and we're going to enter 4.5 centimeters, which is what we converted earlier. Now we need to create the wooden pieces. So we're going to duplicate this frame under the Actions tab. And I've changed the color to a brown so that I know this is a wood piece and the Cricut machine will place it on a separate mat. The balsa wood I'm using is 2 millimeters thick, so I've created 3 layers to achieve a 6 millimeter depth. I've also created some spares in case they get broken. Now let's create the glass piece. Go over and create another square under the Shapes tab, and we're going to resize it so that it's smaller than the outside area of the frame, but also bigger than the inside area. I've also recolored it to blue for glass so the Cricut places it on a separate mat. So looking at the completed frame, I've got these strips down the side to cover up our wood layers. To make this strip, create a square under Shapes. Change the color to white to match the cardstock we're using at the front of the frame. Then change the height to 0.5 centimeters. Each side of our frame is 4.5 centimeters and there are 4 sides. 4.5 times 4 equals 18. Before adjusting the height, click the padlock in the bottom left-hand corner and then put in 18 centimeters. I've also created some score lines on our strip of paper so we know where to fold. Line the strip up against your frame and then we're going to click on the line tool, which is a scoring line, and place it right at the end there to ensure we've got the right measurements. Then we're going to select both the strip and score line together. Go into the Actions tab and click Attach. We then need to create the second score line, so drag that first one over to the front of our frame, create a second score line, and then place it on the end like you did with the previous one. Just like you did before, select the strip and the score line, and then you're going to attach them. And then repeat that step for the last score line. These score lines are optional, but it just means you have the folds in exactly the right place. Finally, let's make the back parts. So create another square and drag it so it's the size of your frame. We're going to use craft board for the back. So I've colored that in an orange color so that the Cricut places it on a separate mat. I'm going to use glitter vinyl to stick onto the craft board for the inside of our frame. To do this, I've duplicated that shape and then I've coloured it purple to match our vinyl. Finally, we need a stand for our frame, which I'm also cutting from craftboard. To make this stand, go over to Shapes and click on the pentagon shape. Make sure this padlock is unlocked so you can change the aspect ratio. Then drag the size over to make it a narrow shape that fits onto the back of our frame. Drag it over to the side, and we're actually going to cut the top off so that it has a flat shape instead of a pointy one. To do this, create a square and resize it so it's smaller, and drag it over where you want to get that flat shape. Then select the two shapes together, go over to the Actions tab and click Slice. And when you drag those pieces over, you'll have a flat top. Just delete those excess pieces. And then we want to change the colour to match the craft board. And the Cricut will place it on the same mat as our backing. I'm also going to add a score line here so that it's easier to fold. Under Shapes, we create that score line, make it a little bit smaller, and just drag it over to that end bit there where we want to fold it and stick it on the back. Don't forget you need to attach the score line to this object, so select both objects and then press Attach. So these are all the steps in Design Space. When we click Make It, Cricut will place everything on a separate mat based on the colours I've chosen. Then I've repeated all of these steps for the 1/6 scale, but instead of a white frame, I'm making a black frame. Also in 1/6 scale, I've only cut 2 pieces of the 2mm wood. We don't want it too thick. You'll need to consider the most important part, which is what to put in your shadow boxes. For the purple frame, I've gone with these peony flowers, and I used the butterfly off this birthday box for our smaller frame. To miniaturize these items, all you need to do is open it in Cricut Design Space and then resize the objects to match your frame size. Now we're ready to make it. I'm using glitter vinyl for the smaller frame in blue and purple for our bigger frame. For the cardstock on the side and front of our frame, we're going to use the scoring tool first. Once done, the Cricut will ask you to replace the scoring tool with the fine point blade, and it will cut out those shapes. Now balsa wood can be a little bit fragile, so to stabilize the wood, I stick a piece of contact on one side. Wood must be placed on the strong grip mat, which is purple, and you might need to tape it down. And to cut wood, you need a Cricut Maker and this knife blade. Be sure to move your star wheels all the way to the right, otherwise the Cricut will leave indents like you can see here. I ended up needing to recut some of these pieces because the star wheels did some damage. I've used a sealed laminator pocket for the glass. You can also use a plastic sheet or acetate. The backing and stand were cut from this craft board. Our flowers and butterflies were cut with some coloured paper. I recommend using the intricate cardstock setting to cut these finer cuts. Now we're ready to assemble. We've got our wooden pieces here. Place some tacky glue around the edges, and we're going to stick the layers on top of each other. Once the glue's completely dried, sand the edges to give a smooth finish. Now we're going to place our glitter vinyl onto our craft board backing. Fold your stand where the Cricut has made a score line. And then glue this piece onto the back. Use the backing as a guide for where the placement should be. Then give it a little test drive so you know it stands on its own. Then I assembled the peony flowers If you'd like to see a tutorial on how to assemble these flowers, click the video above. Use your frame pieces to check that the flower fits inside your shadow box. Then glue it all into place. It's really crucial to place the flowers right in the middle, leaving plenty of gap so that it fits inside your shadow box. I also added some stamen to the big flower. Next, I painted the frame white. Make sure you get in all those nooks and crannies. Once the paint has dried, apply some glue to your frame and be sure to remove any glue cobwebs. Using a steady hand, place your glass piece on top of the frame. Place another thin layer of glue around the glass piece, and then you're going to put your white cardstock piece on top of that. Turn your frame around so the glass is facing down, and we're going to apply another layer of glue. Then very carefully stick that back piece down. And when we turn our frame around, everything fits perfectly. The final part is gluing that side strip we created earlier onto our frame. This is used to hide the layers of wood and to give it a more authentic look. Going to the trouble of making those score lines means everything measures up perfectly. Follow these exact steps for the 1/12 scale. The only change is the 2 wooden pieces instead of 3. I also painted it black instead of white. And there you have it. We've got our shadow boxes in 1/6 and 1/12 scale. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you'll consider subscribing to my channel. See you next time!